How many of you are working in a critical infrastructure? In the Philippines, critical infrastructure is defined by two items. One is the Public Service Act and one is the National Cybersecurity Plan. The main difference is, see, Public Service Act really talks about critical infrastructure, while the NCSP expands it and actually shifts it to critical information infrastructure, the systems that run the CIs, right? Under the Public Service Act, very clearly stated doon is the coverage includes telecommunications and other public services. So it's very clear, but based on the letter of the law, the critical infrastructure pertains to telecoms and other public services that may be identified by the President of the Philippines, which none of the past presidents, including the present one, have actually defined. So medyo loose yung ano, wala pang. So CI, anyone can be a critical infrastructure, di ba? So ganun na lang yung tema na, that's the way we're going to do the discussion now. Um, Under the NCSP also, it's not going to be, the CIIs and the CIs are not going to be identified on an industry level. So for example, I am from a power generator. Not all power generators will be tagged as CIIs. It depends on your economic and contribution to the economic and what happens to you when you go down. So the smaller ones probably won't be part of the whole thing. So even the power sector, diba? So power generators, for example, not all power generators will be tagged as CII. As a matter of fact, the DOE now has formed that task working group to identify the CIIs for the country. So they're creating this criteria to do that. Now, I don't really know what will happen if you fall under a CII. Kasi they're going to prescribe a lot of controls for the companies. Eh. Whether we like it or not, will incur some costs. Right? And probably not make business sense to some, but I don't know. So that's the first step. But at least that message to me, coming from a power generator, critical infrastructure, is the government is doing their part. No, we always say, di ba, bagal ng gobyerno. It took a lot of time for the IRR of these things. The DPA, for example, 10173 was in 2003. Kailan lumabas yung IRR, etc., etc. No? But from my personal point of view, the government is trying to move forward with all of these things with the limited resources that they have. For example, the DICT said, okay, uh, we'll do a not hindi pa nga federated eh. We'll give you autonomy. Each of the departments, you appoint your own CIOs, you appoint your own CISOs. Where do you get all of these people? Even the private sector, who apparently, sabi nila, pays more money than the government, can find people to hire as their CISOs. CIOs, medyo, they're a bit more plentiful than the CISOs. But if you ask, diba, each government agency to have their own CISOs, that's going to be a very tough problem to have. Or you get them only CISOs by name. Diba? So anyway, so the topic for today is this. But really, it's just to give you an overview of the difference in mindset between protecting a CI, particularly OT systems, and IT systems. No? And just wanted to share the mindset that we have. So I'll start off with this image. I'm sure children's, yung mga bata pa tayo, we've seen this figure. Everyone knows who this is, right? Si Moses. No, it's Noah in his ark. But that's going to be relevant later on. And I chose this image because when I was in college, they wanted us to do a speech in Com 2. I said, I don't really like talking. So sabi nila, sabi ko, ano yung, what can I talk about? I was an ROTC officer during that time. So I said, okay, we'll talk about preparedness and na-link it to this story. So, hindi ko na kwento yung ROTC. Alam ko naman hindi kayo nag-ROTC or umiiwas kayo doon. But, ayan. If there's one thing that, we need to understand, is this difference. when there is an IT cyber incident, di ba? You'll see memes, break glass in case of emergency, pull the plug. Because that's the quickest way. Ransomware, di ba? Contain. Okay, pull the plug on the servers. Don't shut it down. You lose evidence. Di ba? Unplug it from the network, disconnect it from the network. That's how we treat it. Eh. But in OT, in a critical infrastructure, we worry about society losing services. Imagine, over the past few weeks, hindi to cyber, not anything related to cyber, plants are going down. Power plants are going down. We have rotational brownouts already in Luzon. I think if two major plants in Luzon goes down, in the grid goes down, you go to a yellow alert. One more, you go to a red alert. Right? And if you don't have power, and for example, a hospital loses its power, I'm sure may generator yon. But with the US-Iran war crisis is coming to an end. Pero during that time, if there was a limited supply of diesel, for example, that powers the generators, then that hospital is going to have a problem. If it was a cyber attack, the supply chain gets derailed, you'll have the same problem also. But as a hospital, will you stop functioning? You try to go to a manual mode. In our plants, for example, my plants, just to talk about EDC, we're a purely renewable energy company. And our assets are geothermal, meaning steam coming from the mountains, extinct volcanoes, right? So we just can't shut down all of our pipes because the pressure will rip those pipes apart and the system will explode. And so we just cannot do that. And obviously, there are national security and economic effects if something goes wrong with the critical infrastructure. No, so kami, in our mindset, we need to run the business. We need to continue to be able to provide power. The hospitals need to be able to provide healthcare even if their systems are, already being infected. Now, how do we do that? We'll talk about that in a few. So again, just a few slides, di ba? Again, sorry. BPI client ako eh. I have friends in BPI. Sino naka-BPI sa inyo? Alam nyo na yung You know what I'm talking about. It's not cyber. I am not saying it's cyber, di ba? Assuming, wag naman. May issue ganon. Availability, di ba? CIA, availability. Di ba? Pag hindi ka maka-withdraw, gaya si Boss Abet in front, if he can't withdraw money, he just opens his vault with his millions of pesos there. Pero he can transfer to his wife the money electronically. He can transfer some money to his girlfriend. Sorry, joke lang. No, but it's an inconvenience, di ba? Over the weekend, I had to borrow money from my mother-in-law because when we got there, I didn't have cash, but all of these things weren't working. So, nahiya ako parang, di ba? But again, if a critical infrastructure goes down, medyo iba yung effect. It's not just a matter. I'm not trying to downplay the inconveniences or the effects of an IT attack. It's just that this is more wide scale. For example, my cousin there, si Henry. Always. Something happens to the systems, the booms won't go up. An ambulance goes through. The booms won't go up because of a breach. So what happens? Trains stop working. Or they work at a very fast speed. They're not supposed to run that way. Diba? We're more concerned about the loss of life and limbs rather than, financial losses. So again, it's just a change in mindset. And again, this is my message for the day. Really, and this goes for both IT and OT. When you start off, di ba, you try to protect. 10 years ago, that's the mindset eh. And even may konting shame ano nga eh. Na-breach kayo. Kala ko ba dami yung firewalls, dami yung endpoint. Di ba? Pag na-breach ka dati, parang, what? Shameful. Nakakahiya. But now, we've shifted the mindset kasi may breach, ano tayo eh, breach mentality. You'll get breached somehow. Di ba? It's not an if, but a when. So now, can you continue to drive the business, to operate the business, even if something's ongoing within your network? Again, are you able to do that? So it's about resiliency now. Is cybersecurity, protection, and we're trying to move to a mindset of cyber resiliency. There was one, he gave me an analogy, no? Parang, as a human, you get sick. Right? Inherently, we get sick. Yun yung vulnerability natin eh. We're vulnerable to bacteria, to viruses, etc., etc. We exercise. You eat a proper diet, you sleep 8 hours a day, you drink 8 glasses of water, you follow all the things that your doctor says. But you still get sick. The difference is, when you get sick, someone who's exercising, someone who's more fit, someone who eats right, we get hit by the same thing, I'll probably have a better chance of fighting the germs off. I'm not saying it will, but my chances are better. And even if I get sick, it's not going to be a heavy toll on me. Right? But I guess yung guys, konting sipon lang para na tayong mamamatay. So again, even if you're trying to be healthy, you still get sick. And it's how you recover from that. Diba? You drink your meds, mapait siya, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but you still drink that. No? So you try to do all of those things. Now, the threat landscape is different for CIs. One of that is, so in IT, really, diba, extortion, ransomware, now meron ng triple extortion. Are you familiar with triple extortion? So, ransomware, in-encrypt yung data, and they ask you to pay. Now, double extortion, they extract the data first, then they encrypt the data. Kaya sabi namin, okay, may backup ako eh. Encrypt mo lang yan, I can restore. Okay. I know you have a backup, so ang threat ko sa'yo ngayon, if you don't pay, I'll delete all of the decryption keys and you hope that your backup works and I leak all of your data to the internet. So that's the double extraction. Yung triple extraction, those first two, and lalo sa US, there are regulations na if you get breached, you have to report to the SEC in, 4 hours, etc., etc. If you don't report, they threaten to report you to the regulators. So the bad guys, the ones who are robbing you, this company A had a breach but they're not reporting to you. So yun yung triple extortion na tinatawag natin. Okay, so sa naman, we're not concerned about data theft. Nakakawin mo yung historian ko, anuhin mo yun. You can't do anything about that. You won't be able to do anything with those data. What we're worried about is operational disruption. Again, loss of life, safety eh. Safety yung priority ng critical infrastructure rather than availability. So when we do changes in our network, it goes through a lot of processes. Second problem that we're having now is that IT and OT are converging. You've heard of air gap, right? So air gap, hiwalay nyo. Yung planted battery, they operate on their own. But it's not going to work now. Simply because the bosses, okay, how much power are we generating now? The plant managers, the operations center, the control centers, they know that. But the management, I want to see that in a portal. So, yung data mo ngayon cuts across. So, nasa nila tinitignan? It's in AWS, it's in a portal somewhere on the internet. So now, your data gets connected to the internet, which is a bad thing. As we know, all of the bad guys sits in the... Kasi we used to operate on a private network. Eh. Now, I heard someone, they talk about microsegmentation a while ago. So, and this is what I was saying a while ago. Let's throw away the definition of the critical infrastructure, CII, based on the laws. and the NSC. For example, my kids, they're into cosplay pag may mga events sa SMX. But they're too lazy to create their own costumes. So they order their costumes. For example, one of the couriers, one of the logistics companies, they suffer a breach. And all of the delivery gets messed up. Diba? Sa anak ko, in my view, costume lang yun eh. Pero sa anak ko, it's a big deal because he won't be able to attend that ToyCon or whatever it is without a costume. And he gets, agitated with that. Well, if the delivery says it's going to arrive today, it doesn't arrive today, he gets agitated. So, you're someone else's critical infrastructure. So, whatever happens to you may affect someone else's lives. You don't need to be a power generator. You don't need to be a telco. You don't need to be a bank. Diba? Your infrastructure is important to someone else. Not just for your company, not just for your bosses. So, I didn't make this up. It's my favorite AI that made this up. So, just to, it's Aura. So, anticipate, withstand, recover, and adapt. That's the summary for the resiliency part, no? We've heard of all of those things. Eh. This is nothing new. Diba? You can't protect what you don't know. But, isang critical dito is, also need to understand your dependencies. Kasi if the system goes down, so you protect the system, right? And this system goes down, this system is integrated into this system, then this system will probably give you bad data, will not work, but you forgot to protect the system. So you said these are the priority one systems. This become priority two. So aside from just doing your assets, if you did ITIL before yung CMDB, di ba? Yung configuration management database, you need to know which systems are connected to which systems so that when this goes down, you know what other systems are going to be affected. Obviously, withstand ito na. Sinasabi natin, you try to repel the attack. So that's protection. Then, if something happens, how do you recover? Do you have the necessary backups in place? Ngayon, dati backup lang pinag-uusapan na we're talking about immutability. Ngayon, bumabalik sa air gap. Yung backup mo, i-air gap mo uli. Air gap, lumang ano na yan eh. Yung segmentation, if you look at Purdue Enterprise Reference Architecture, it talks about segmentation. It doesn't talk about microsegmentation. It's a very old architecture. But from then on, sa plan, sabi niya, segment mo yung network mo. Segment it from the IT environment. Segment mo yung OT. Within OT, i-segment mo pa yan. Pag samasamahin mo yung sensors mo, pag samasamahin mo yung PLCs mo, wag mong paghahaluin sa isang network yung mga yon. So, these are some of the tips that, moving forward, if you don't have it yet, I'm sure you do, but these are some of the things that you can do. Know your critical assets. Again, conduct your tabletop exercises. Diba? Who makes the call? Kunyari kami, planta. I'm responsible for cyber. If something's going on, I do not have authority to tell the plant to shut down. Who has authority to do that? Is it my president? Is it my board? Is it the plant manager? We cannot decide when we have that incident. We need to be able to decide prior to that happening. Kasi once the shooting happens and you don't know who's going to lead your team, then you're screwed. It's too late to do that. So, there's going to be a hero somewhere, but, heroes die, sa totoo lang. Yeah, segment your environment. Hindi lang IT-OT. Yeah, again, someone talked about microsegmentation a while ago. Gulat ka yung Printstar server mo, nagkakausap sa SAP mo. Something's wrong. Diba? Practice recovery. Ilan na sa inyo, may mga external drive before, babackup kayo ng files, and then, you keep on backing up ng files, nagpalit kayo ng laptop, pagsaksak sa panibagong laptop, di na mabasa yung drive. Backup is one thing, recovery is another. And then, ayan, ano lang yan. Lagi naman yan. Make resilience, security, ganun din. Safety. It's everyone's responsibility, di ba? So, I think the slides will be shared to you, I think. But I know na karamihan naman sa inyo is matigas din ulo. You'll take a picture of the slides like my good friends here. So I prepared a one slider of everything that I've discussed. So ito yung sinasabi ko. It wasn't training when Noah built the ark. He saw the signs, God told him, nobody believed him. The same way, boss, we need to buy firewalls, we need to do this. But we've been operating for 40 years, nothing has happened. Why should I believe you? And in the end, he was proven right. So preparedness is key. We need to convince people. Hindi naman lahat naniwala sa kanya. So that's the lesson we can learn from the Noah's Ark. It wasn't raining when he built the ark. So that's it for me, and thank you very much.
We are Network Manager. For more than a decade in the industry, we have provided IT solutions designed to boost operations and redefine IT management. We have improved the lives over 100,000 users across the Philippines. Through our globally awarded and internationally compliant solutions, conveniently integrated IT management platforms, and efficient service provided by highly trained technical engineers. Our commitment to integrity and excellence enabled innovative ways to achieve fortified security, full asset visibility, and all-around control for the companies that trusted us through the years. At NMI, it is always our mission to improve IT lives. To know more, visit www.nmiph.com.